Orphan drug policy, expert insights on the Inflation Reduction Act. Former FDA official Eva Temkin recently spoke about the state of orphan drug policies and the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, in two Biospace articles. As a life sciences and healthcare regulatory partner and former acting policy staff director at the FDA's Office of Therapeutic Biologics and Biosimilars, Temkin's insights shed light on the ongoing challenges for orphan drugs as they navigate these new regulations. In her discussions, Temkin emphasized that the IRA's limited exemption for orphan drugs does not effectively promote ongoing innovation. She argued that the current structure does not adequately encourage the development of orphan drugs, particularly in the face of increasing costs and external challenges. Temkin also pointed out that the initial IRA framework put platform technologies that treat multiple rare diseases at a disadvantage. These discussions make us question the effectiveness of current legislation in driving innovation in orphan drug development. Rare disease drug makers shift plans after win in Trump megabill. The recent changes in legislation have sent ripples of optimism through the pharmaceutical sector, especially following President Donald Trump's tax and spending law, which introduced a new provision. This provision has the potential to exempt specific medications for rare diseases from government price negotiations, a shift that has crucial implications for drug makers. What does this mean for the industry? The provision passed recently by Republican lawmakers indicates that drugs catering to multiple rare disease conditions will now be protected from the Medicare Drug Price Negotiation Program. Previously, only single rare condition drugs enjoyed this exemption, creating a climate of uncertainty among manufacturers. Many drug developers were thus inclined to either reconsider their research endeavors or shelve them altogether, fearing they might not recoup their investments due to the negotiations. Now, with this new exemption in place, companies are feeling encouraged to resume their exploration into additional rare disease treatments. Stacy Frisk, the executive director of the Rare Disease Company Coalition, which represents companies like Alexion Pharmaceuticals Incorporated and Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, states, "Indeed, businesses are now reassessing their focus on developing treatments for additional rare diseases." Frisk noted that some firms are reigniting research initiatives that had previously been paused due to financial uncertainties, while others are actively refining their investment approaches for their development pipelines. This change holds significant weight for firms deeply invested in rare disease therapies. A study from the National Pharmaceutical Council, published in May, revealed a striking decline in the proportion of drugs obtaining second orphan designations from approximately 12% down to just 6% following the enactment of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, which introduced the negotiation framework. Adoran Du, the chief regulatory officer at BridgeBio, a biotech company that boasts 3 FDA-approved treatments for rare genetic conditions, remarked, "As part of our lifecycle management, it's crucial for us to identify other rare disease indications and patient demographics we can serve with our existing medications. This adjustment in policy is incredibly significant to our business strategy and will enable continued investment in rare disease treatments." Looking ahead, while the industry is eager to move forward, there still exists ambiguity regarding formal guidance from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services related to the implementation of this new exemption. George O'Brien, a partner at Meyer Brown representing pharmaceutical entities with orphan drug designations, noted, "I've had numerous discussions with clients trying to gauge the influence this would have on their developmental programs. I believe companies are likely to proceed prudently, adhering to the law even without official guidance, assuming it could take an extended period to receive any. The critical question remains, to what extent will pharmaceutical firms pursue further rare disease indications to steer clear of price negotiations? An orphan drug could lose its exempt status if it expands to treat a broader, non-orphan patient group. For instance, AbbVie Incorporated's HUM-IRA is recognized for its orphan designations related to rare conditions but is also extensively used for common autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease. Despite the apparent incentive to circumvent government price reductions, legal experts argue that it's unlikely for drug manufacturers to shy away from pursuing research into non-rare diseases due to these regulations. Most biotech and pharmaceutical firms prioritize scientific advances and patient well-being, O'Brien added. It's rare for a company to avoid studying a condition solely based on these financial concerns. The decision to delve into rare versus broader disease indications will essentially hinge on the economic viability of the drug, according to Matt Wetzel from Goodwin Procter LLP. Ultimately, it's an internal debate, but the new provisions do eliminate some previously limiting factors that affected how companies regarded the pursuit of rare disease drugs, Wetzel explained. While optimism pervades the industry, some advocates for life science investment qualify their enthusiasm, suggesting that fully overcoming the challenges imposed by uncertainty in the past may take time. For over 2 years, this environment has discouraged investors. John Stamford, executive director of Incubate Coalition, a group advocating for venture capital, remarked. "We're hopeful now that this disincentive has been removed, which ought to rekindle investment as the economic rationale returns." This updated regulatory framework is widely celebrated as a victory for patients, too. The Biotechnology Innovation Organization asserts that this amendment will promote greater funding toward initiatives focused on some of the most challenging diseases to treat. Similarly, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America commended the exemption for removing barriers to investments in new therapeutic solutions. Yet, not all patient advocacy groups share a positive viewpoint on this change. Some assert that exempting certain cancer drugs, such as Merck and Company Keytruda from negotiations, could delay more affordable pricing, depending on its approval timeline and the specifications laid out in the Inflation Reduction Act. Meredith Basie from Patients for Affordable Drugs expressed concerns, stating, "This policy essentially creates a loophole for pharmaceutical companies to maintain higher prices on their products." In conjunction with AARP, Patients for Affordable Drugs conveyed their worries in a letter to senators prior to the bill's passage, emphasizing that such provisions could restrict negotiations and perpetuate inflated drug costs. Other analysts have even criticized this exemption as regressive to the Trump administration's earlier initiatives aimed at curbing U.S. drug prices. Anna Kaltenboek, president of Verdant Research, cautioned, "It seems to increasingly exclude more drugs from negotiations, marking a win for pharmaceutical companies but raising questions about the genuine benefit to patients." As the healthcare community navigates these recent developments, we would love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe that these changes truly serve patient interests, or do they favor pharmaceutical companies? Join the conversation. Your opinion matters. How price controls are killing rare disease drug development. Imagine a world where life-saving treatments are out of reach for millions suffering from rare diseases. This is the reality we face today, but buried within a recent landmark legislation lies a glimmer of hope. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed into law by President Donald Trump on July 4, includes a provision that could dramatically improve the lives of 30 million Americans battling rare diseases. This provision, known as the Orphan Cures Act, offers a lifeline to the pharmaceutical industry by exempting certain drugs that treat rare diseases from the Democrats' price controls established in Medicare as part of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. Without this exemption, the Orphan Cures Act could have discouraged pharmaceutical companies from investing in these vital treatments. But here's where it gets controversial. The Inflation Reduction Act initially carved out drugs that treat just one rare disease from its price controls. However, if a manufacturer secured approval for a second indication for a rare disease drug, it lost the exemption. This is not only counterintuitive but also detrimental to patients. Shouldn't public policy encourage companies to explore the full potential of their drugs? The reality is stark. Thousands of rare diseases lack effective treatments. The Inflation Reduction Act, perhaps inadvertently, perpetuates this lack of options. But the Orphan Cures Act's inclusion in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is a step in the right direction, though it's hard not to wonder why such legislation was necessary in the first place. The Inflation Reduction Act's price controls are stifling innovation. According to the Incubate Coalition's Life Sciences Investment Tracker, drug companies have discontinued over 50 research programs and cancelled 26 drug projects since the Inflation Reduction Act's passage. Even more concerning, the National Pharmaceutical Council reports a 48% decrease in the number of orphan drugs receiving a second indication following the Act's passage. The development of orphan drugs is a risky venture, but it's not unique in its challenges. Bringing a new drug to market costs an average of $2.6 billion and takes over a decade. Only about 1 in 10 drug candidates makes it from Phase 1 clinical trials to the market. Pharmaceutical companies rely on the exclusive sales period following a drug's approval to recoup their losses and fund future research. Price controls threaten this delicate balance. The Inflation Reduction Act's price controls could result in 135 fewer drugs by 2039, according to one study. This disruption in innovation could cost the US $18 trillion in health losses, according to research by University of Chicago economist Thomas Philipson. The inclusion of the Orphan Cures Act in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act may mitigate some of these potential losses, but it's clear that Congress must go further and roll back price controls on prescription drugs altogether. What do you think? Should public policy encourage pharmaceutical companies to explore the full potential of their drugs, or is it acceptable to limit their incentives through price controls? Let us know in the comments.